This is In-Ear Insights, the Trust Insights podcast. Do you want to understand data science better as a marketer? Would you like to learn whether it's the right choice for your career? Do you need to know how to manage data science employees, vendors, agencies? Take the Data Science 101 workshop from Trust Insights. In this 90-minute on-demand workshop, you'll learn what data science is, why it matters to marketers, and how to embark on your marketing data science journey. You'll learn how to build a KPI map, how to explore and analyze Google Analytics data, how to construct a valid hypothesis, the foundation of marketing data science, the basics of statistical concepts like centrality, distribution, regression, and clustering, which if you don't know what those words mean, you will. Essential soft skills in data science, and how to hire marketing data science professionals or agencies. The course is on demand, so you can watch it whenever you want. You don't have to be at any place at any time. And it comes with the videos, the audio recording, PDF of the slides, automated transcript, KPI map example, and a sample workbook with data because this is hands-on. You get to try some of the stuff out. If this sounds good, just head on over to trustinsights.ai/datascience101. That's trustinsights.ai/datascience101. In this week's In-Ear Insights, we are talking all things community management, why they exist, what to and not to do. So Katie, start us off. You've been having some thoughts about digital communities and communities in general, but obviously with current circumstances, more of our communities are digital than not.
Yeah, we were talking last week about communities, and I had mentioned the Peloton community. So I'm one of the, thousands of people during the pandemic who got a Peloton because I just didn't feel safe going back to the gym, even though they had reopened at one point. And what I quickly realized is why Peloton is such like a cult following in the community. And a lot of it is around the inclusivity and not the like, hey, you're one of us, you belong, but there really is a something for everybody. And so over the weekend, I did what they call your century. And so it's your 100th, act of whatever thing it is you do, whether it's running or strength training. And so I was on the bike and they immediately sent me an email and they were like, here's a code for your free t-shirt that says you get the Century Club. And I was like, this is all really nice because you get a little badge on your bike. And so it's like, it's that continued motivation to keep you bringing back. And then obviously you can like ride with your friends and, chat with people on social media. But then it also, the other side of it got me thinking that a lot of communities get it wrong because at the core of it, the purpose of a community is we're all just looking for some place where we belong and we can fit in and we can find people of our own. And so, it started me thinking even back all the way to like, high school and middle school and elementary school when you're trying to find those little cliques of people that you belong with. And it's really difficult to do. And some of us still feel like we haven't quite found quote unquote our people. And I'm definitely one of those people who I'm still sort of like swimming around trying to figure it out. I mean, we have our own Slack community, Analytics for Marketers. And I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like I don't even belong there because a lot of the feedback I get from other people is I don't feel smart enough to ask a question. So I just lurk. And so that to me says that we're not doing the right thing to make people feel welcome and to make people feel comfortable just being a part of the community. And so it made me start to think about the do's and don'ts of having a community or even being a participant in a community and, sort of what is the goal of having a community? So it just brought up all these questions for me. Chris, what do you think?
It's interesting because there are so many ways to do communities right and wrong, like you were saying. I belong to a huge number of just these offshoot niche communities. I've got like 20 or so Slack instances and 30 some odd Discord servers that I'm a member of. And yeah, some of them definitely more than others have that a sense of, these are people that I choose to spend time with willingly, right? Because there's always those folks that, you have to be in a community because of work or something just to see what's going on. But then there's what you do in your free time. And the things that stand out to me that well-run communities do is there's a sense of egalitarianism, right? That no one person is more important than others. There are obviously, community managers and moderators who keep the trains on the rails. the best communities are, I think, almost like benevolent dictatorships in some ways. There's a clear purpose, and then there's very strong moderation to keep bad actors from being bad actors. The communities I've been in that have turned toxic didn't have that moderation, right? Bad actors got away with bad stuff, and it doesn't take much to cause harm to community, right? It's like you don't need to drink a gallon of cyanide to kill yourself. Just a little bit will do. And the same is true with communities. It doesn't take much to ruin one. It just takes one unchecked bad actor to sort of poison the well, as it were. And it's interesting because that need to belong is physically wired into us. Like we are tribal creatures, and that's just sort of a natural thing we do because as animals, we kind of suck individually. We're not particularly well armed or well armored, so our only advantage is that we can think and we act in packs. And so biologically, we have that need to belong.
Well, and think about, all those different communities you belong to. So there's, no shortage of Slack communities or Facebook groups or Discord communities or, Twitter
Clubhouse
groups
chat rooms.
or but so there's no shortage of places. So what you could say to someone like me, like, why do you feel like you can't find your people? Why do you feel like you haven't found like that right group? And I think one of the things that, at least from my perspective, that communities get wrong is, yeah, I can join any Slack group I want. I can join any Discord group I want. That doesn't mean that I belong there or am welcomed. They might have that automated bot that says, welcome, Katie, please introduce yourself. But then if nobody engages with me, if I ask questions and nobody responds, if I'm trying to jump into a conversation and I accidentally kill the conversation, like I no longer feel like I belong in that community. And it's kind of that sad experience of like, okay, am I just sort of being like ignored until I leave this group because I don't belong? Or is it really just a function of how the community is set up and run, that there's really no good moderation, nobody continuing to engage all of the people some way or another? And I think that I've seen it, both sides, and I've definitely had both kinds of experiences.
A lot of the things that when you're talking about the essence of community, in a lot of ways you're talking about emotional fulfillment in some way, right? This community gives you something that
Mhm.
you're missing in your life, and or it also reinforces the things that you value about yourself, right? If we look at, I hate to drag us there, but if you look at politics, right, and just how strongly people feel about their group, whatever
Mhm.
their group is,
Mhm.
it is that it's so strong that it has become part of their identity. Like that is where that's sort of like the apex of community. When you've done such a good job that this becomes part of your identity, it's then very difficult to dislodge. As someone who's an avid Peloton fan, right? When you start wearing the swag and you start, having the jargon and the lingo that only other
Mhm.
people in the community have, you have this shift in who you are and who you
Mhm.
believe yourself to be. And that sort of is the pinnacle of community expression. Now the challenge is obviously that gets very dangerous, as have seen, in the last years really with politics, that can become very toxic if it's mismanaged unintentionally or intentionally. But yeah, it's that emotional fulfillment, that sense of connection. And one of the things that, let's point the finger at ourselves. One of the things that I think that we get wrong with analytics for marketers is that there isn't a water cooler. There isn't a sort of a general, let's just, have BS, what music you're listening to and things like that. It's a very
Mhm.
focused community. So it has utility, but it doesn't have
Mhm.
emotional connection because there is no place for people to just talk about fluffy stuff.
I was thinking that exact same thing as I was thinking through this idea of, what communities do right and what communities do wrong. And we really have limited people down to what they're allowed to do within the community. And that is probably a big reason why we don't get more engagement or people who are continually asking questions. So that's something I definitely want us, you and I, to explore, this year, is to how can we strengthen our community and make people feel a little bit more welcome. And, our conversation last week about Peloton is what made me think of this, because you had made, sort of the tongue-in-cheek comment of, cults are really hard to build. But in some ways, Peloton is a great example because it does have a cult following. And there really is a little bit of something for everyone. You have, your strength, your bike, your walking, your running, your meditation, your yoga, like sort of any level of fitness. And even if you go into a class with a more advanced instructor, the first thing they do is talk through, if you're a beginner, this is how you can also participate. This is for everybody. So the messaging within it is all they try really hard to make sure everybody feels like what they're doing is achievable. And I feel like not, we in Slack groups don't do that same thing. And so it was that idea of, how do we take this model that obviously didn't spring up overnight, it's been grown over a number of years, and start to replicate that in other places, because it's obviously working for them, and what can we learn from that? And I think you're right. We need to think about, like, are people coming there because they want to be around similar minded people? Are people coming there because they only want to talk about analytics and marketing? Or are people coming there so that they can sort of like blow off some steam and share some puppy photos with people who might also enjoy them? So I think that there's a lot of work for us to do in order to make this a more welcoming and friendly community. And it's kind of a bummer that right now with the pandemic, most communities are kind of forced to be online, because I'm someone who doesn't want to be online more than I have to be, but it's the only place where I can find other people to connect with.
And I think one of the things that at least the better communities I'm in, the ones I spend more time in, have is, they have a tremendous number of channels within that community. Even if you look at the Trust Insights, our internal Slack, there's way more channels than there, quote, needs to be for a business, right? We have now playing the stuff, we're watching and listening. We have random quotes board. We have, where am I? Social good stuff. So there's a lot of things that are expressions essentially of ourselves. In one of my Discord servers, there is a watch party channel. There's music, games, pets. There's literally a channel just for pets photos, because people were sharing them so frequently in other channels that the moderators were like, all right, look, guys, we need to put this in like one spot. So they just created a pets channel. And the advantage of that is not only a chance for members to self-express, right, emotionally, but it then helps you build those strong common ground links. Oh, you have a dog just like mine. Or, oh, we listen to the same kinds of music. Or, oh, I didn't even know that this kind of music was a thing. I found this odd sort of metal alternative rock group in one of these communities. Like, oh, that's actually a pretty cool group. And the more contextually appropriate, values appropriate opportunities you have in a community for somebody to connect, the easier it is for people to forge those strong connections, because they see, oh, this is something I'm interested in. And another one of my Discord servers, we have a fitness channel. It's just like, here's the things we're trying. I'm currently leading an 8-week sort of yoga thing with the help of some apps and stuff. So there's all these different things that you can offer, particularly in a pandemic, right? In a digital age, where it gives people a chance to, they're there for that central purpose, whatever the stated purpose of the community is, but then it gives them the ability to learn more about their fellow community members and find those common grounds. That's whenever you go on LinkedIn, there's always those jerks who are just like, I'm here to, add you to my professional network. And there's,
I hate those. Please stop pitching me those things. I don't want to just randomly show up in your network. I know that didn't happen.
But that's sort of like that very shallow level of networking. Whereas when you talk to somebody about your dogs or the music you're listening to or the cryptocurrency you're investing in, you have the opportunity to do that real network, oh, I want to get to know this person. They seem like they are an interesting person I want to hang out with.
So let me ask you this question, Chris, because it's not that it's counterintuitive to the work that we do, but I don't think it's what we're known for, is sort of that human to human connection. Where does automation fit in, and where does automation get in the way of building a community?
The easiest way I would say is that there are certain things that are process based, like welcome messages, rules, things like that, that are important that the automation can serve to make sure everyone has the same consistent onboarding experience, right? Just like any company. Um, and automation's real advantage is in the monitoring, right? Community moderators cannot be on 24/7. They shouldn't be. And in some of the largest communities, they actually do have shifts. Like moderators have shifts
Mhm.
to make sure that somebody's always around in case a member needs help. But automation can help with a lot of that. If you have um, a known list of terms that you prefer to not see mentioned in your community, right? Bots can monitor for that and alert a moderator immediately, like, hey, somebody just said this racial slur, even in jest. It's still one of those things like, nope, can't, not here. That's not okay. And really giving you more insights and collecting the data about your community. One of the
Mhm.
signs of I think of a very healthy community is that it is around the clock, right? There's somebody always on, people always talking about something, sometime. One of my Discord servers, there's 400 people in the community, so about a third of the size of analytics for marketers. There's literally 5 or 6 people actively talking any time of day, because you log in the first thing in the morning, like, you missed 900 messages. Like, holy crap, you guys, chill. But people in Malaysia, in Japan, in Australia are kept
Mhm.
going on to their day, and they have their group. When you look at analytics for marketers as our example, it's pretty quiet outside of working hours. Is that
Mhm.
okay? Yes, right now. But if we want to, this is one of the things to weigh in your community strategy. If you want to build that strong community, you also have to acknowledge that it's going to be something that bleeds outside of work hours.
Mhm. I agree with that. I also think in terms of automation, I think that there are ways to keep people engaged where you include some of that automation. Hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? Just sort of like those automated check-ins, or, you've been a member for 100 days. Congratulations. Here's a little, 100-day gift or something, for you. Just to sort of remind people, like, we value you. You're part of this community, and in some ways it is a little bit like just that participation trophy for showing up, but sometimes showing up, is half the battle. And I think that some of the thing with communities is there's this expectation of, if you join, you have to do all the work to become part of that community. And I think communities need to sort of meet people where they are and help draw them in. So if I join a community and the only message I ever get from it is, you know welcome from the welcome bot, and nobody else, or like, hey, we saw you stopped in, or anything like that, then it's sort of a flat, you know gray experience. Whereas if there is a community member, manager, or a team, or even just sort of ambassadors in there who are like, hey, it looks like we have a whole bunch of new people, welcome, just like, hey, I haven't heard from you yet, do you have any questions, like anything, like, you're doing half the work. So don't expect your members to show up and do all of the work to become engaging members. Like, you have to pull them in, give them a reason to continue to be there.
Yep. You know, and some other obvious things in one of my other servers. There's a channel just for biographies. Like, people can put their biography, and then as you interact with somebody, you can go into the biographies channel and go, oh, if the person has posted a bio, you can read more about them. Get a sense of who they are, where they spend their time, and things like that. But you're right, communities are really no different than any other human relationship, right? It's give and take. It has to be an equal
Mhm.
partnership if you want to be successful in the long term. And as we've been talking, shame on us for not making it more like that in our own Slack groups. So we have some work to do there.
Mhm.
I want you to dig in a bit more, though, on this idea of, we're not necessarily known for human to human stuff. How do we unpack that and pivot on that? Because I would argue we're half known for that, namely you. Whereas I'm known for the machinery.
Well, I think part of that is that you're known and I am unknown. And so I think there's this also sort of public perception. And so, the other sort of, and this, please, with a grain of salt, is not an, oh, woe is me, like, here's my childhood traumas, commentary. It's more the, when I walk into a room, the first thing people ask is about you. And so we could be known more for the human if there was more of an opportunity for me to engage within communities and promote that. And that's, that's on me to find those communities to spread that message. And it's something that I've been working on and trying to do. Anyone who knows me really well knows that I am very much an introvert and very much like the shy kid. I don't want to do a lot of the talking. That makes it really difficult when the only thing you really have to work with are digital communities. And if the community is not set up in such a way that you feel like it's a safe, positive space for you to not immediately be judged or immediately get backlash if you misstep and say something that's even slightly the wrong thing to say, then it's really hard. Whereas I think the other side of that, Chris, is you are a very well known entity in the digital space. And it almost feels like you can walk into any room and people are like, oh, it's Chris Penn. I know exactly who he is, what he stands for. Nobody has to really question that. But you've also been working really hard at that for the past 15, 20 years. Whereas I am newer to the space. And so I have a lot of work to do. And so it's easier for you to walk into a community and say, hi, I'm Chris Penn. Here's my 5 books. Here's my 200,000 blog posts that I've written, and people immediately know who you are. Whereas, that's more of the AI data analytics side. Whereas more of the human organizational behavior connection side is the stuff that I do. People are like, cool, I don't know who you are. Oh, you work with Chris Penn.
Yeah. So how do you pivot that? Like, obviously I think the easiest place to start is in like a community that you own, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are 1,500 some odd people in analytics for marketers.
Right.
What do you think our game plan is, to bring that balance to the human and the machine side?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we achieve those different goals that we have with the community, and also make the community more valuable, make it more vibrant?
Mm-hmm. I think some of it has to be consistency. And so more consistent posting, more consistent sharing of information from authored by both of us, authored by me, authored by you, authored by Trust Insights collectively. I think that there needs to be more of that consistently so that people can start to see both voices. Um, a lot of the questions we get in the community are more technical. So maybe there's an opportunity for a less technical channel, more of that, not humans in marketing, but more of that human organizational behavior side of marketing that isn't strictly about which algorithm should I be using to analyze my data. So I think that there's a lot of different ways to approach it. And, you know, yes, I own the community, you own the community. We also don't want it to be such that only you and I can ever ask questions in the community. And I think that that's something that we haven't done a great job of, is letting other people know, like, hey, it's okay for you to start those general questions. I think a really good example of a community that does kind of run around the clock is our friend Ginny Dietrich. She has the Spin Sucks community. And, you can see that it's fairly active all day long from a lot of different voices. Even on weekends, even, overnight, people are asking questions. And it's not just Ginny who owns the community who's asking these questions. Most of the time, she's responding to questions. She's, introducing other people. And I think that that's an example of a smaller community that's done really well, where people feel like I can talk and engage all the time.
I think another great one is the content marketing world, the CMI Slack. They have daily questions that are asked in the entire channel. Jeremy Bednarski does that. And some questions get a lot more responses than others, but there's no backlog of questions you can ask people. And they have regularly scheduled activities. They have a Twitter chat every Tuesday at noon, and it's actually a really good way for them to attract new members to their community, as well as get their existing communities involved. They have book chats with noted authors and things. So it always reminds me of like my parents' retirement community. Like, there's bingo on Tuesday nights and things. But those consistent practices, like you said, consistency and activity, as much as I despise the phrase in the sales context, I believe it's true in a community management context. Activity begets activity. Doing stuff gets other people to realize it's okay to do stuff. And, I think having a lot of those different hooks in creating opportunities for people to engage is definitely one of the things that can be helpful. We've talked about things. We've never actually fully defined the community management role, and it might be time to do that.
I think it might be.
So to wrap up, communities, not just yet another marketing buzzword, and much more like a relationship you want to build with a whole bunch of people. And as with any relationship, you give as much as you take if you want to be successful in the long term. If you got questions about any of this stuff, if you have suggestions about, hey, here's something that I would like to see in the Trust Insights community, pop on over to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. If you'd like to somewhat gently tell us everything we're doing wrong, that's the best place to do it.
We can take it. It's okay.
And as always, no matter where you're listening or watching this episode, please stop by to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. You can subscribe to the show in all kinds of different places. And we'll talk to you folks soon. Take care. Bye. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.